Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the first Executive Talk webinar. Thank you for joining us again after the unfortunate hiccup we had last month. A very warm welcome to Mama Shirley Machaba. Thank you, Mama, for making time again to share with us your philosophy on diversity and inclusion, why this is important to you, and especially one of the philosophies I've learned from you, lifting as we rise. Before we start our conversation today, please allow me to share a little snippet of who Mama Shirley is. And I'm saying a little because if I had to go through a whole CV, it would take us more than an hour. So Shirley Machaba is the CEO of PricewaterhouseCoopers South Africa and a regional senior partner of the Southern Africa firm for the last 3 years. She's been a partner for 18 years. She's a qualified chartered accountant and chartered director, South Africa. She has over 28 years, that's wisdom, guys, of internal, external audit, risk management, compliance, and governance experience within the private and public sector. She's a renowned speaker and has presented at national, regional, and international conferences. She has served on the board of the IIA South Africa and chaired its Audit, Finance and Risk Committee for 6 years before moving on to be the president for 4 years. Before her role as CEO at PwC, she held numerous positions. Just to name a few, she was the Governance and Risk Internal Audit leader and the global leader for about 5 years, the government and public sector leader and global leadership team for 3 years, the PwC Africa diversity and inclusion leader for a year, and also member of the global team. And I think one thing I need to say about Shirley, these roles, when she left these roles, most of them, her successors were females. She has presented at diversity and inclusion matters locally, regionally, and globally. Just to name a few, it was at the Africa World Economic Forum in Cape Town, the UN Women's Side events in New York, as well as the Forbes Women Africa Leadership Women's Summit. She is passionate about education and people progression in general, in particular youth and women. She's a mentor to most youth and women aspiring to be leaders with an aim of developing future leaders locally, regionally, and globally. And Shirley, just to mention, I am a product of Shirley. She has received a number of accolades. I'm just going to name 2 or 3 of them. Recently, she was awarded the Businesswoman of the Year by the IA Africa Business Leadership Association. She was also honored by the Black Management Forum as Manager of the Year in 2016. So guys, you will agree with me that we're quite privileged. I'm actually privileged and honored to have you, Mama Shirley, to have this conversation with us. Thank you so much for joining us. And just a reminder, this is a conversation. It's not a one-way stream. So I encourage you to please post questions and comments to Shirley around diversity and inclusion, and also lifting as you rise. So maybe before we start around the importance of diversity and inclusion, Mama Shirley, let's first go and think about, what is diversity and inclusion to you?
Thank you so much, Lucy, for having me, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm really honored to have an opportunity to be addressing you and your audience. So I really tried to research a bit about diversity and inclusion. I will share with you what it means to me personally. So my research confirmed that really diversity means bringing different people with different experiences, lifestyles, interests from different ethnic groups, cultures, and backgrounds. And when it comes to inclusion, is really providing the equal opportunities and resources to people who were excluded. So what it means to me, really, diversity is around bringing somebody at the table, creating that seat at the table. And inclusion will mean it's about allowing that person you provided a seat to dance. And how does that person dance? It's about providing that person the opportunity, the tools. So for me, the voice is one of the very important tools that somebody can use when you are given a seat.
Okay. Thank you so much, Shirley, for that. And I mean, I like your analogy of you've really simplified it. Diversity is creating a seat at the table. And I think we see a lot of that. Seats are being created at the table. But I think importantly, inclusion are those people actually given an opportunity to dance and to dance to the music that's important to them. So thank you for that. And I guess then the next question goes to the theme of this webinar. And it's actually two questions in one. Is diversity and inclusion important? And if so, why is it important, especially at the leadership role?
Yeah, Lucy, thanks for that question. I would like to answer this by giving a background first. Diversity and inclusion is a social risk, and it has been proven by the World Economic Forum report. There was a research done that it's really a social risk that is the highest rated amongst the ESG risks. You will know that with ESG, it depends on which country you are. E might be important for one country, S might be important for another country, and G must be important, might be important for another country. But here in South Africa, in Africa as a whole, the S is very important. So it is really a risk that needs to be managed. Otherwise, if we don't manage this risk, we are sitting on a ticking time bomb. You can see what is happening around the country. The consequences are really gangsterism, break-ins, crime, and all those things. You will not think, diversity and inclusion is really contributing to that. If we don't manage that, these things are going to continue. So yes, of course, diversity and inclusion is very important. Why? Because of the reasons that I gave. If we have a risk, my competence is risk management. If we have a risk, it's up to us to manage that risk to an acceptable level. So the other important aspect about diversity and inclusion, when we have a diverse and inclusive culture, we tend to really have wider, richer conversations because we have people who have a diverse thinking, diverse ideas, diverse perspectives. And by having that, it's good for the organization's financial performance, it's good for recruitment of the great talent, it's good for retention as well. Productivity as well goes up because you end up inspiring your people.
Okay. Thank you, Shirley. And I think this is quite aligned to a lot of research that's been done. I mean, if you look at the McKinsey, I think McKinsey did a study in 2022 called Diversity Wins. And in that specific study, just to quote, they mentioned that there's a business case for strong D&I than ever. It says companies outperforming peers on profit has increased over time because of diversity and inclusion. And I think one of the things I really liked in that study, Shirley, and which is quite aligned to what you're saying, it says a company's making real strides shows that a systematic, business-led approach and bold concerted actions on inclusions are needed to make progress in this space. And maybe just leading on to the next question, as the CEO of PwC Southern Africa and previous diversity and inclusion leader for Africa, and also sitting at the global level, I mean, what are some of the initiatives that you have fostered in these different roles? And maybe you can share a little bit about, from a PwC perspective, what you've done, and also maybe take us on a little journey on what you've also done outside of your role, these roles that you have the different hats that you wear within the PwC organization.
Yeah, thanks, Busi, for that. Let me start by saying, really, for me, it starts with my vision. My vision all the time has been, particularly when I got to this position of CEO and other leadership positions, it has been really to have an undisputed number one professional services firm with quality clients and quality people who are digitally fit. The last part, it goes without saying, you can't, succeed in this evolving environment if you are not necessarily digitally fit. So, but at the same time, how do we make sure that we are number one, undisputed with all those good things? It's around ensuring that we have a diverse team that is going to help us to implement our strategies. So our purpose, maybe if I can allude to our purpose at PwC, is to really build trust in society and solve important problems. And coupled with the values, we have the values that are more linked to diversity and inclusion, which is the care, integrity and reimagining the possible and working together. I will unpack why I say those values are very important. So diversity and inclusion, as I said before, it's a strategic imperative, and it's one of the important problems we'll see, which is aligned to our purpose. We are here to solve important problems, and there's no way that we can leave our purpose if we ignore diversity and inclusion. So for me, that's how I came up with the business case of saying, let's relook at our culture, the way we do things at PwC. It starts with the leadership construct, the tone at the top. Mm-hmm. So I used my voice. You remember the last time previously I said, if you are given the seat at the table, you need to be given the opportunity to dance. And one of the tools you have to use is your voice. So I really leveraged on my voice. And given my attributes, people who have worked with me, they will agree that I'm very authentic, humble, very courageous person. When I'm at that seat at the table, I try to apply emotional intelligence. What does it mean? I don't fight every battle, right? So, when you're humble and people see you as authentic, a person of integrity, whatever you say, and you're saying it with passion, they tend to believe, they tend to buy in, they tend to support. So I think that's the strength that I have, Wusi. And that links up with the leadership style that I employed when I became the CEO. I didn't copy anybody because, what works for somebody doesn't work for me. My very basis that I used was to leverage off on my strength, So what are the activities that we have done after, we have made sure that the culture is sorted, there's buy-in at leadership level and all those things. We came up with a strategy. We have a diversity and inclusion strategy because my belief is that what gets measured gets done. So that strategy has some, KPIs, measurable KPIs that are also achievable. We communicated those KPIs with the leadership. The buy-in was there, and obviously because we are a very big organization with different groups, the leaders had to communicate to their relevant parties, partners, staff. So you see that culture was starting to unfold to a direction that I really wanted it to go. Then, we developed, in addition to that strategy, the KPIs and whatever, we had to come up with some operational plans. You will remember that we came up with a 10-point plan, which focused on, recruitment, retention, promotions, and all those good things. And every single item on the 10-point plan had KPIs. For example, when we recruit, we'll say, we need to have 60% African colored Indian. And then we'll need to have, the balance will be white. The story goes like that. I must indicate to you that we also tried, when we report to ExCo and the board, we try to color code those KPIs so that at least we can show the board as to where we are. You know, for example, if we completed a KPI, it should be coded green. If it's in progress, it should be amber. And if it's not yet really there, it will be red. So overall, all those KPIs or 10 points, we are not necessarily doing well when it comes to retention. And I must explain, you know, majority of the organizations, whether it's a particular industry, we are all hit by the great resignation, particularly in our profession. So that's why we are still battling. But we're trying so hard to make sure that we continue to recruit according to our 10 points, right? One other example where we were really not doing well in our environment, you know that we expose our resources to global, exposures, global clients, and all those. It's one of the 10 points, and in the past we used to just have majority white, but today I can tell you that we're starting to see progress in terms of, exposing our people. So let me just quickly read out some of the things that we have done so that at least I don't leave out anything. In addition to the transformation strategy, we have a gender responsive enterprise development. We have gender responsive procurement policies, corporate responsibility programs as well. Remember, it starts with practices and policies. So we had to revisit our policies and practices so that at least when we communicate to the business, they know that they have to be consistent, they have to be compliant. And our ESG program really is very gender neutral. We keep on checking as to what are the intakes that are included in that program, and most of the time you'll find that the majority is female. Last week, for example, Lucy, I was at the LeaderX as one of the speakers. I was so pleased to have met a couple of women who were saying, Shirley, because I had to talk about our societal purpose, and the women were saying, Shirley, what you're talking about resonates well with us because we are on your ESG program. So it's we leave these things. We don't just leave them theoretically and then we don't do anything. Some few things that we do, which is really helping us to really achieve what we have set ourselves for. It's really storytelling, profiling our female leaders. It's really another impactful tool to ensure that even men can start believing that it's possible. If you give a female a chance, if you give a diverse team a chance, you succeed in many respects. The whole deliberate transformation and gender responsive succession plan, Lucy, during your time, we didn't really have a formal succession plan. But right now we are deliberate. At leadership level, we told ourselves there's no way that we can leave a sustainable legacy if we don't have a formal succession plan. As I'm speaking to you now, I have a meeting with Dion. I think it's Friday this week to formalize, the succession planning so that at least, I believe in transparency. So even if I work with everyone, Busi, I make sure that, I leave a trace of a female leader after, I'm done with whatever I'm doing. But this time I want to formalize it because you will remember that according to the partnership agreement, our Africa CEO has to be involved. So that's why I'm having a meeting with Dion. So the whole issue of pay gap, you will know that it's a key issue. We are still battling with it. When we were still in the firm, we're sitting at 14% pay gap. Through promotions, through salary increases, through salary benchmarks, we are making sure that we continuously address the pay gap. As I speak to you now, our pay gap is a single digit, right? The whole issue of introducing the gender-based violence policy, we can't say because we are accountants, we are in an audit firm, gender-based violence is not happening. So we had, if I can just boast about this, we are the very first audit firm to come up with a gender-based violence policy to support the victims, because majority of the victims are really females. It goes without saying. Yes, there might be males, but I'll be surprised if males are victimized, Yeah, so I already spoken about the recruitment policy, which is really aligned to the 10-point plan. And we don't necessarily do these things for only our people. We have a societal purpose strategy that I'm spearheading across the whole of Africa. We make sure that we also have initiatives or programs to train our SMMEs, because we believe that SMMEs are really the backbone of the economy. And unfortunately, majority of those people who are in the program are females again, because we believe that if you empower a woman, that person is not going to prioritize buying an expensive car or an expensive whatever materialistic thing. They will think about their families. They will think about creating sustainable jobs, think about making sure that they run successful businesses. I must say, we have a program called Faranani. Ever since we started in 2006, it's really doing wonders. Busi, I'm sure. I think you have. I've invited you to that program when we're celebrating the women. Yeah.
So thank you, Shirley, for I mean for that detailed description, and to the people online. If you have any questions or comment for myself or Shirley, please just post them. As I said, this is a conversation not just led by me. The idea is to have everybody participate, and don't be shy to ask the hard questions. As you've seen, Shirley's quite open, and as she mentioned, she's an authentic leader who will say it the way it is. Um, but Chile, I think you said something so important around, and I think the IOD essay on Friday or last week released something around diversity in leadership. And I think one of the comments that they included in that publication was around lack of strategy around diversity and inclusion. So I mean, it's encouraging to hear that from a PwC perspective, the strategy. And I like the fact that you first started with the purpose, the values, you spoke about culture, then you spoke about a strategy and how that strategy is actually operationalized by being measured in the different areas. So it's quite encouraging to hear the journey that you since you've taken over that PwC has embarked on, and I guess that all I can say is that I wish you well, and I know that um, I mean, listening to you, I can hear there's been quite a lot of changes and programs that are very intentional. So for me, it's quite encouraging. And maybe just to go in a little bit more, because online you have a number of people, and I mean it's a diverse audience. It's employers, employees, students, entrepreneurs, SMMEs, business owners, and what would your advice be to them around creating or fostering a diverse and inclusive culture? Because I think for me, it's important to talk about diversity and inclusion. Because as you mentioned earlier, I mean, I'm going to go back to your example. Diversity is being invited to the table, but if you don't have an opportunity to use your strength to dance to the music, you're not actually part of the inclusion. So what advice would you have to the different people online around fostering that culture in their different spaces?
Yeah, Busi, I think I will again allude to the fact that, it's really about making sure that you are transparent in whatever you do, and you intentional when you are driving this agenda, not to really be arrogant. It's important to convey the key messages in an impactful way, so, and if you along the way you succeed, it doesn't mean anything. Success doesn't mean anything if it's not significant. You need to make sure that whatever you do in really evolving that culture, it's impactful, it's
Mm,
significant, right? Communication is also very important. As I said, transparency is important, but communication, and I cannot overemphasize that you can't communicate once and think things are going to happen. It has to be continuous, whether it's through newsletters, through town halls, road shows, wherever. Because particularly in our case, we are a very big organization. We have regions, we have, neighboring countries. So here in South Africa, when you talk diversity and inclusion, you're talking transformation as well. But in other countries, that is not applicable. So it's about, giving people the tools to say, this is what we are doing. However, you being the better people to understand your environment, you have to build on what we have put in place at a central stage. Yeah.
So maybe just a practical example. So what would you say to a female, and I know we're talking diversity and inclusion, and as we've mentioned, it's wider. It's wider than just, gender and culture. It includes a lot of other things. But maybe let me just take it to a female student or a female who's just started in corporate or who's going through a change, and they actually want to get a seat at the table, or they have a seat at the table, but they're not being included. So their music hasn't been playing. They've just been playing different type of music. What would you say to that female? Could actually even apply to a male.
Yeah. Yeah. So if we give an
Inclusion is
example of a
wider.
young,
Could apply to
yeah.
somebody who has a different. Sorry, go ahead. We had a glitch, but I think it's ESCOM. So let's carry on.
Yeah, if we talk about somebody who is young, maybe not yet, what is the word? I don't want to say not yet experienced, because, it's about believing in people and giving them a chance. So that person need to really be curious, ask a lot of questions before you even go to that meeting. Really, you can't go to a meeting without understanding, what is the word? The culture in that boardroom. Yeah, let me put it that way. So whoever who invited you to the table, you will have to have some kind of a pre-meeting with him or her, just to understand how things are done and stuff like that. Obviously, it's more about preparing, because my understanding is that if you are invited to a structure, you will be given the pack, right? You have to make sure that you show up as well. You have to prepare well in advance, and if you have questions before the meeting, there's nothing stopping you from asking those questions. And let's say maybe you are in that boardroom and you are not given a chance. Yes, there's imposter syndrome as well at play. Because young as you are, when you get into the room, people are different, they have different attitudes and stuff like that. Make sure you go in there with the confidence, cut through all the noises. If you can see that there's these other people who are really starting to give an attitude, ignore them. My take all the time, Ebusi, is that when I walk into the boardroom, whatever topic is being discussed there, I believe that I have a valuable input to make. I know something that you don't know. So I must feel I have an equal opportunity to contribute. Yeah. So it's more believing in yourself, having the confidence, and preparing before the time. If you have questions, you ask questions to the relevant people. And let's say maybe you are, asking questions and somebody tried to interject you, use your voice. I will stress that you need to continuously use your voice. Whenever you start using your voice, you become powerful. Then people are going to start respecting you, particularly if you prepared. I have no doubt they will really, in fact, they will even keep on inviting you to the table. The last thing you want is that if you are given a seat at the table, you act like I always say to people, you act like a Duracell. Duracell meaning, I'm sure you've seen that advert of Duracell where, it keeps on just nodding. Whenever somebody is talking, you nod. It's because you didn't prepare. Yes, there's nothing wrong, when you keep quiet for a while in the first meeting, or maybe you don't even say a word, but the next meeting, you need to make sure that your voice is heard. The moment you go to the next meeting, second meeting, and you say nothing, they will never invite you again. You will just, hear people saying that there was a board meeting, or there was an exco meeting. Oh, but why was I not invited? Oh, no, we were just talking. things that we thought we can discuss without you. So, and that's the end of you. Yeah.
And thanks, Shelley. And maybe just to add on to that, and I think you said it earlier when you spoke about as you transition from all these other positions at PwC into CEO, I think you said you remain true to who you are. You're a humble person. So in you, in those meetings, speaking up, I think what's important is to speak up as yourself. Don't try to be somebody else, because if you're not authentic, it will come through and you'll actually get tired. So, but if you speak up from an authenticity point of view, I think that's where for me, that's where the weapon is. That's what I've learned a few years back, that I don't have to show up as somebody else. I'm in that room because of Busi, not of somebody else. So I owe it to myself and to the people that have brought me into that room to show up as myself. So thank you,
No.
Shirley, for that.
Yeah.
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 There was a question, Shirley, around, SEO. What is the one thing that is most concerning to you in the context of South Africa and the broader Africa? And then thanks for your insights so far.
Yeah, thanks a lot for this very loaded question. I mentioned the fact that I was at the LeaderX summit last week, and I was one of the speakers on Thursday. The topic that I was given was the role of accounting profession in ensuring the sustainable South African economy. So for me, what really keeps me awake, yes, I know about the energy crisis, everybody's complaining about it, but for me, inequality is key. And unfortunately, I'm not going to talk about only one. Inequality, unemployment, we all know unemployment is on the rise, and that is not only affecting the majority adults, it's also those who are graduates. If I can specifically mention the number of graduates that are sitting at home not working, I think per our research, it's 730,000. You can imagine these are people with masters, with whatever, postgraduates and stuff like that. So that also eventually lead to poverty, because if you're not working, how do you sustain your families? How do you sustain yourself? So that keeps me awake, Busi. And I must say, what am I doing? Okay, maybe let me wait for additional questions, but I wanted to share, what am I doing as a person, as an individual? Yes, through PwC, we have a lot of initiatives, for making sure that we give these young unemployed opportunities. We have different programs. You can go to the website, Foundation of the Future. I'm always pleased when I meet the Foundation of the Future program candidates. Foundation of the Future has got nothing to do with the accounting profession. Any profession can be included there. That's why it's sitting within advisory. So I singled out that one because everybody knows we are running an audit firm and we should be training accountants. Those young people are really exposed. They are now, they go through that program for 18 months and they are now, accessible to the likes of Discovery, the likes of all these big listed companies. Are we perturbed around the fact that they are leaving us? Not at all, because that's our job, to train the young and unemployed. So there's a lot, Busi, that is happening from our end. But as an individual, I am a board member for Business Leaders South Africa. I'm also a board member for American Chamber of Commerce. Those two organizations, acknowledging that government doesn't have capacity, we make sure that we mirror whatever we focus on, we mirror the plans of the country. For example, education, health, and all those things, infrastructure crisis, energy crisis, and all those. So we mirror those plans and make sure that we have committees and task teams to really continue to collaborate with government, so that at least we end up having a stable and capable South Africa Inc. Because if our environment around us is not in good shape, these businesses that we are running are not going to thrive. Yeah.
Yeah, that's yeah, and I think you raised something. I think now everybody's talking about the energy crisis, but I think the big thing is, over and above the energy crisis, the unemployment rate is one that really scares me as a person. So the next question, and there's other two on the side, from Tariro. Thank you, Shirley, for the insights. Please, can you explain more on the imposter syndrome? We're probably going to need to have another webinar on that
Yeah,
one.
so
Sorry,
Kariro,
yeah.
I'm glad you are on the audience. I don't know whether, because it's virtual, because the last time I checked, you were overseas somewhere. So, Tariro, imposter syndrome is something which is really a barrier to a lot of our young people. And I'm singling out young people because at our age, I think we've seen it all. I don't get, moved by imposter syndrome. So, imposter syndrome is when, let's say, maybe you are about to get into a structure, and these are really leadership structures, whether it's a board, exco, or any other important meeting that is happening, and you find that the room is not necessarily diverse. It's full of majority is really people who are not like you. You know, maybe you are one of the few. Maybe you are two or three, and no matter how prepared you are for that meeting, you walk into the room and somebody just give you a look. You know that look that I'm talking about. A look that is not very peaceful. A look that is saying to you, why are you here? Hmm? Are you not lost? You know? And then if you're not confident enough, you don't believe in yourself, and maybe, yes, you prepared, you tend to forget what you prepared. And then you chicken out whenever you are given that opportunity to present. You forgot everything that you even when you are asked a question, you can't even articulate. So that's the imposter syndrome, Tariro, that I'm talking about. Sometimes it's done deliberately, sometimes it's not done deliberately, it's not intentional. It's just that you, because you don't believe in yourself, by just looking at John or Gert, and then he's just looking at you, innocently, and then you think, oh, no, 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 this person is starting to ask himself, why am I here? So my advice to people to deal with imposter syndrome is to believe in yourself. As I said before, when you walk into any room where you're supposed to participate or present, you need to know that the person next to you doesn't know what you know. Then you are fine. You know, you can imagine how I survived. In most instances, I was the very first and whatever, and I was surrounded by all these people. But I learned at a very early stage of my leadership roles to say, I am having this seat at the table and I'm going to be speaking with authority, because what I know, definitely you don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for that, Shirley, and maybe just my take on that. So I think even now, I still sometimes suffer imposter syndrome, and what I've learned, one of the strategies, I call them monkeys. So the monkeys come and visit, and I literally say, monkey, you have 60 seconds, and I count to 60 seconds. I was like, okay, I've given you time, monkey. Now Boosie's going to stand up, monkey will, and it's amazing because I've trained my brain to do that. It comes, and within 60 seconds, that imposter syndrome is gone because I have gone through a journey of accepting it, acknowledging it, and telling it, listen, I'm in this room because I deserve to be here. So thank you, Shelly. And I must actually say, you're one of the people that really helped me through that journey as I started, because I started at PwC as a 23-year-old. But as I got into different leadership roles, I think you were always there and saying, listen, you are in this room because you deserve to be in this room. So thank you for that. Um, then the next question, and I think it says you mentioned retention as a challenge, and it's really everywhere.
Mm.
So how are you managing the risk from a PwC perspective? And I think now
Yeah.
it's even more. If you think about COVID, people are working remotely. I mean, we have people that are working in South Africa, but working for organizations globally. So from
Mm.
a
Yeah.
PwC perspective, what are you doing?
Yeah, that's a good question. We have a variety of programs and initiatives that are in place, Busi, and the person who asked the question. Let me start with the fact that we started by revisiting our value proposition. In fact, before revisiting our value proposition, we conducted some kind of a survey, which was not necessarily very long because people get very fatigued with surveys. And out of the survey, we got some feedback. That survey was called the listening tours. We encouraged our leaders to listen to our people, in addition to whatever formal survey. And what came out today was that, a couple of things. Recognition was an issue. Sometimes in our environment we work. I don't want to say 24 hours because I don't want to scare people, but sometimes it comes to that. So, the other one, not necessarily financial, because really, but let me put it in there and then I'll tell you what we've done around all those challenges. The other one was really around the issue of quality of life. The other one was around, the whole issue of, how do I phrase it? Inspections. Our young people are getting very fatigued with various inspections. Those who are in the audit firms, they will know that it's not only one. Big firms, it's around the local regulator, it's around our peer reviews, it's around, our global firm. And right now we introduced another one, we call it real-time assurance, right? So what we have done to really deal with those challenges, we are trying to make sure that we introduce. Oh, the other one that I didn't mention is that, as Busi indicated, as the market started opening up after COVID, young people are becoming very attracted to this whole thing of virtual, working, remote working. So we introduced the remote secondment model because young people also want to have that global exposure without moving. Unfortunately, our staff profile is really young people with young families and whatever. So even if they don't move, but they would want to have that global exposure. So that's why we introduced that. In terms of recognition, it's part of the value proposition that we reviewed and encouraged all the leaders to say, make sure you care. Make sure you keeping closer to your people, re-emphasize the value proposition, even though they are snatched by outsiders. They have the very best environment in the sense that we have proper trainings, we have coaching, we have all these other good things. We ran regular surveys, benchmarking, salary benchmarkings, and we had to implement very decent salary increases. I think the last salary increases overall, it was double digits. You will agree with me that majority of the organizations didn't really manage to afford the double digits. It was more single digits. And the nice thing at PwC is that Busi will attest to this one. We start by paying our employees before us. I can say to you, I haven't got my profits, So, but our people are happy. They got those double digits because we believe that our people are our assets. Without them, we are nothing. The other thing that really addresses the whole quality of life, we try and make sure that we make sure the work is equitable to everyone. No manager or resources overloaded, and the other manager doesn't have a lot of clients. We encourage that all the time, and this is across the whole of Africa. We also made sure that what was the other one? So I spoke about the secondment, I spoke about the caring, I spoke about, partners making sure that they're closer to their people. We also introduced, in addition to that double-digit salary increase, we introduced, financial incentives as well. The last one that I remember, which was applicable to assurance, was, giving each of the resources an allowance to make sure that they set up properly at their homes. so that whenever they are working from home, there's no issue of not having a desk, because we can't have a blanket. We can't be generic and say everyone comes from the same, well-to-do families. There are people who come from families that are really poverty-stricken, and we would want to make sure that they have tools and opportunities like any other person. Yeah, those are the ones that come to my mind, Lucy. But it's a lot. It's a lot. Yes, because of this great resignation, we lost a couple of people. And this selection of clients is also one thing that we have done, because you can't make sure that everyone is having work in an equitable manner if you're still having a lot of clients. Some clients are unnecessary. And let me unpack, when I say some clients are unnecessary. I'm sure you have heard what is happening out there. They're attacking the profession. So if we, no matter how much you are paying us, if we believe that in terms of risk management, we don't want to associate ourselves with you anymore, we in a respectful manner engage with you and say, this is our last time we're auditing you, or this is our last time we're providing professional services to you. Yeah.
Thanks, thanks, Shirley, for that. There was a question, but maybe before we get into that question is, I think somebody just said it's so true what you say about, you know, transparency and being intentional are critical ingredients to successfully implement diversity and inclusion. But the question is, I mean, how have you dealt with leaders that were resilient to these radical changes that you've mentioned? So, from a leadership perspective, did you have any resistance from the leaders, either at the executive level or the next level, where the KPIs are sitting, and how did you deal with that?
So, Busi, you mentioning two things. Can you repeat the question? You are saying for leaders. Are you
No,
talking about
leaders.
leaders?
So, I mean, somebody said, you've done so well you've been very intentional in ensuring that, the diversity and inclusion topic and strategy is implemented at PwC. But this person says, how have you then dealt with those leaders that were resistant to the changes that were introduced?
Oh, yes. So definitely we have plus or minus how many partners, because leaders really is at partner level, director level. Partners, starting with partners, we have 400 and, yeah, I think in South Africa only we have 268 partners, and across it might be plus or minus 270 something. So for us, it started with our line of service leaders. When I say line of service leaders, remember we have three lines of service within the auditing environment. It's advisory, it's assurance, and it's tax and legal. So those three people sit at ExCo level. So as I said from the beginning, it's around getting the buy-in from the overall leaders at ExCo level. And obviously, it's after you unpacked your business case, as Busi indicated. You have a strong business case around diversity and inclusion that is including the benefits and the pros and cons, right? Yeah. So those people were not necessarily encouraged. And I spoke about my way of talking to people. I'm authentic, humble, and having that integrity. So people tend to trust what you're saying, because they've never heard of anything that I say which is in the interest of share. It's always in the interest of the firm. So it becomes easier for them to buy into what I'm saying, and then they have to cascade it down, cascade the message down to their leaders within the different groups. Yes, there might be one or two leaders who don't like what is happening. They react in different ways. Some of them can also even reach out to global to say, oh, no, Shelly is doing reverse discrimination or whatever, because that happened. But, that, opposing voice tend to die down, because majority will be doing what we expect them to do. because they can see the value in what we are doing. So it was never really, it never came to a situation where we have a very, very vocal person who say, no, I'm not going to do this. And because we kept on monitoring the situation on a regular basis at exco level and board level, no, it was no brainer. You know, if somebody was resilient, they were resilient in their corners, you know, and as long as you are resilient in your corners, I normally cut through the noises, particularly unnecessary noises, and focus on the majority, because the minority is not going to give me any results. Yeah.
Sure. So I guess what you're saying, I mean, there was resistance, but because of your style of leadership and how the whole process was put together, it was very easy, to let the few that were complaining sit where they were, or remain where they
Exactly.
were. So and hope that really helped, because I think there's, with every strategy, anything that brings big changes like this, I think there's always going to be resistance. It's how do you deal
Exactly.
with it, yeah, in a manner that that is respectful, and if you've set strategies and have become intentional. And I also believe if something, if there's an KPI and it hits people in the back pockets, you'll start seeing changes in behavior.
Exactly,
Yeah.
Busi. Just to add on that, I remember you reminding me, yes, when I got into the position, obviously there were a handful of people who were not necessarily, this whole thing of having a perception and without knowing a person. So, what also helped is really, again, after having crafted this strategy, after having worked on the culture, come the end of the first year, the financial performance was telling the story. Because in my business case, it was about to say, you will see, these days, people are attracted to organizations that are diverse and inclusive. So the first year, really, I just always thanked God that things worked out, financial performance and everything, and partners were happy that, oh, Shirley's strategy is working. When she says diversity and inclusion is important and it's going to really do wonders in terms of our financial performance, this is what is happening. And throughout, ever since then, Lucy, we are doing well. I'm not even shy to say we are really doing well. And I hope and pray that this last year of mine as a CEO, I'm also going to be doing well, because you can imagine with partners, the moment you don't do well, oh, they throw stones at you.
All the best, but I mean, I believe this, it will continue. The next question, I think there's a question around so I mean, there's just as a comment from Sibusi, so saying, coming from the the program that you mentioned at PwC, he says it has opened so many doors for him as a group, and they always recommend the program to university students that this person works with. So thank you for that. And I mean, I can attest to that because I follow a few of them on LinkedIn, and amazing what they've grown to do, not just in industry. Some of them are in bodies, international bodies, where they're actually presidents and are running big portfolios. So it is really a good program. And
Yeah.
one more question before we wrap up, because we've got 6 minutes left. The question is that imposter syndrome is also something I still need to overcome, especially sitting next to leaders who have a vast amount of experience. Based on that, any 2-3 books you can recommend to Zibusiso about imposter syndrome?
Yeah, so I've listed a couple of books, but as you said, any 2 or 3. There's a book by I think it's Dr. Judith Aminine. Yeah, Equal but Different. So
Yes.
really, it unpacks gender diversity and inclusion and all those things, and definitely you'll come across when she unpacks this imposter syndrome. And having said that, I remember when she was addressing us, she said to us, she admires the power that man has. Because this imposter syndrome, most of the time, it's I'm so sorry to say this, it's men, you know. So she admires men's power, and she believes that, you know, men's power can be really channeled to empowering women. And again, it's important for all of us in our respective organizations to shine the spotlight for men that are really doing well. Because as much as we say, you know, a man this and man that, you know, we need them. We can't succeed without men. It's more to develop those allies for yourself, so that at least whatever you want to convey in that boardroom, in that exco, you know, you have somebody who will support you, and you have somebody who will act as a coach to some women in the organization. Yeah, that's one book. And then the other one is, you know, Die Empty by Todd Harry. So that Die Empty really is around really what Busi has said, lifting as you rise. So when they say die empty, you can't go to your grave with the wisdom that you have. You have to keep on sharing. You have to pay it forward. And that's what I normally do. 2 weeks ago, I was talking to the, you know, audience at the Association for Black Actuaries. I had no idea that, you know, I thought all the time the accounting profession is the one that is really not necessarily yet diverse and inclusive. But, you know, can you believe, we'll see that the actuaries apparently in total is 2,000 and blacks are only 80. So, you know, I really felt inspired, and they felt inspired by my talk, you know, which was really themed Pay It Forward. Then the other one, the last one, it's a Purposeful Life by Prof. Nkutlo. Remember when I started this presentation, I was talking about, you know, you need to serve, you know, you have to serve to be of service. Yeah, you have to be of service, and it starts with a purpose. Every time when you want to really check, you know, what your purpose is, you have to always ask yourself a why. Why are you doing something? So I was saying on Saturday, I was addressing another group of women. I was saying to them, you know, a lot of people always say to me, but Shirley, you can get out there and run a very successful business. You have the networks, you have whatever. But I believe that, you know, God has chosen me to serve with a purpose at PwC. I have a purpose. You know, you can imagine those young people getting into PwC and they don't have a role model, somebody like them. They will be, you know, having this imposter syndrome experience. But if they have somebody like me, like other people like them, at least you know, they feel they belong. You know, yeah. I will stop there.
Okay. Thanks for that, Shelley. And I mean, I think you spoke about, it's a pity we don't have much time left, but I think you spoke about two or three things that are very important. It's dying empty. You know, why are you here? What's going to happen? What do you do with the wisdom that you have? And that goes back to that. If you're the only one sitting in the room that looks like you, there's something that's not right. So Shelley, I mean, just in a minute, because we've got 2 minutes left.
Sorry,
I
Busi,
mean, what?
can I correct? You know, the last book is written by Professor Wiseman Nkutlu. I see it says Kaplan. No, it's Nkutlu.
Yeah, that the wise man, yes. Just and Shelley,
Yes,
maybe
yes.
just for a minute, just I mean, in closing, what would you like to say to people that are online before we close the session?
Yeah, thanks, Busi. I'll be very quick. It's really, for me, I believe in running my career like a business. It's about knowing where you are, where you are going, what you are supposed to do to get there. And there's a couple of tools. Mentorship is one of the tools. It's a powerful tool. I'm still doing it. And also the advice for me is that, you know, there's so many opportunities out there. All you need to do is to raise your hand, perfect what you do, so that people can keep on giving you more. The future is female, and the future is bright. I'm not trying to exclude men, you know, man has been getting it all the time. So, but the time is now for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mameli, for those nuggets of wisdom and for sharing the last hour with us. And I guess we can all be the change we want to see in the world. I mean, for me, that's important. Any space that you might be a student, you might be an entrepreneur, SMME, unemployed, but what are you doing intentionally in that space? Because if you show up in that space, as you said earlier, Mama Shelley, and you surround yourself with the right mentors and you always put your hands up, opportunities will really find you. So thank you, Mama Shelley, for your time. Ke a leboha. And to everybody that joined us today, thank you so much. This webinar will be live on my website by end of the week, which is www.busimati.com, and looking forward to you joining us on more webinars and further interactions. Thank you.
Thank you so much.